got an important analysis for you. I say it's important because, in my view, this chart right in front of us is key to some of the current circumstances going on right now, specifically this virus that has gone around the world. It's a fascinating chart. So this is the clean chart before my notes were made. There are some key features in this chart that we should talk about, and it's specifically right here. There we go. What is this? Did you think that when you saw this? Because, whoa. The first time that I saw this in the chart, I remember pulling this up it says here, okay, so this was January 10th, 2020, local time. When I say local time, that is local time for the chart, which is, all these times down here, which is in Tomsk, Russia. Okay, that's where the Space Observing System is based. So local time, it was January 10th, but it was January 9th, my time, California in the United States. And pulling this up, I just looked at it and thought, whoa, I had not seen that before on this chart. And I really want to give some recognition and gratitude here to a friend of mine who I've been talking to over the last few weeks as we have tracked the virus karyotype. Now this looks like a karyotype, an image of a genetic sequence. My friend Alex Clark has a biology degree and writes on the theme of the biological imperative. And she writes a lot about the physical human body and other biology, but focused on the physical human body and how energy affects the physical form. So we're a good combination because I'm really focused on the energies and what's flying around out there in terms of the energies, what I'm perceiving. And she's really good at interpreting the effect in the physical. So I looked at this chart with her and she gave me the name for this, of what this is in biology, a karyotype, an image of a DNA sequence. Now, she even nailed the RNA component because we saw a mitochondria in the Schumann charts going back a few weeks. Let's focus in just on this image. Now, there's another very fascinating image in the chart, and that is this. Look at this. See how it's almost like a trident? So we're going to talk about that. In this blue space, which mirrors the karyotype. There's also these two, I like to call them pillars, right next to each other. And then these bars of light here. So let's get into it. Okay, so this was fascinating. Now this image came into the chart right before the full moon in January. The full moon is the next day. So over here where it's black. Okay, so midnight local time would be right about 1-2, right at the very end of this page. The full moon was January 11th at 2:21 a.m. in Tomsk in the USA, and adjust for your local times, but it was January 10th at 11:21 a.m. here in California. So this karyotype appeared in the chart just before the full moon. Now, I'm not sure how to explain this exactly, but here's what I'm going to say. This is in general about the chart. I don't know how these things show up in the chart. It could be through intention. It could be through actual manipulation of technology. I really don't know. It could be the greater human consciousness or creation at work miraculously causing this to appear. I don't know exactly how it happens, but what I do feel is that there are forces of energy, forces of dark, forces of light, and everything in between. And for me, everything is expressed in energy. That's just how I'm oriented to look at things. And then that energy comes into form. I'm not blaming anyone in particular. I'm not attributing the effects to anyone in particular. Like I said, it always amazes me the stories that I see in the charts and how it transpires. So I just wanted to add that here, okay? So basically what you have here is you have the first karyotype. Okay, now we know it's a karyotype of a virus. And that's how it felt. I want to show you something. On January 10th, this is the article that I had lined up in drafts. On January 10th, I had January 10th, 2020, last modified. I had started to draft an article called Energy Virus Eliminated, Download Failed. I could tell from the chart that this virus would be defeated immediately. To me, it's in this very chart that we are looking at. On January 21st, I had a second article that I was working on, Download a Virus Defeated. Because what has happened is, since the initial karyotype appeared, and that is on this chart here, every time it's defeated by the higher forces of light, there's a new attempt at a download. And what I saw was that basically there was adjusting and fainting, if you will. It would come in at one frequency level, then it would come in at another one. And every time it was defeated at a particular combination of frequencies and aspects of those frequencies, like the quality, the amplitude, the actual frequency, it would be again defeated by the higher light. There would be an immediate response. It's almost like we do have a planetary system, a planetary body of energy that contains all of humanity and all of life, and that we are one energy system that had an immune response to this energetic virus, because I saw it come in energy first. Now, this is not where it started. Okay, this is when it manifested in this perfectly designed form. Here, okay, where it actually looked like a karyotype. And this is the most perfect image of a karyotype in the Schumann charts from the fall up until now. And I'm making this video on March 29th, 2020, which is a 3222 day. Sorry. I was just laughing. But anyway, so this is this is where they got it the most perfect. And by they, I don't know what I mean. Whether it's just the forces of nature or human consciousness or an aspect of human consciousness, but it felt to me when I first perceived this that it was an invasive force, that it was not natural to humanity, that it was an invasive force. And I'd like to show you an image of how I perceived it. I first perceived it as energetic because when we saw this in the Schumann resonance, the virus had not been really publicly announced or talked about in the news. I wasn't aware of it, and that was January 9th in the United States. So let me tell you a story of energetically what I perceive was attempted. This is an image of a plasma ball, and we're going to use the plasma ball to be an illustration of the Earth. The center of the plasma ball is the Earth. The outside of the plasma ball is the atmosphere, the upper atmosphere. So the Schumann resonances go between the surface of the Earth and up into the atmosphere. And these are, let's also imagine that these now are lightning strikes, okay? I know I'm using a plasma ball to illustrate this, but it's a pretty good illustration. Here you have the lightning strikes. They're interacting between the Earth and into the atmosphere, generating these resonances. You have this unseen hand. We can see it, but this unseen influence. And look at that. Do you see this little image here? It almost looks like two eyes. It looks like one of those big alien heads with two eyes. I don't know. Does it look that way to you? It's really just a reflection, but it kind of looks like a scary figure, and there's two eyes and a long nose and a mouth and a really long forehead. Okay, so back to the story. Well, there's this unseen influence, and I'm not saying it's aliens. I'm just saying it's some kind of strange influence. Maybe it's just the shadow aspect of humanity. There's a back and forth here of energy. All this is to illustrate, I want to illustrate how I felt that the virus came in energy. So now we're in the center of the plasma ball. And I want to use the imagining where the center of the plasma ball is the Earth. And so all of this around the Earth is the atmosphere in this example. Okay? And what happens is there's an attempted energetic download of sorts. And this energetic download comes in, and what it wants to do is it wants to go straight and connect with the Earth. I'm going to invoke a space of non-creation as I'm saying this. So this is important when you understand about how to set intentions and energy. Well, here's another tool set that you can use, because I want to invoke a space of non-creation. So I'm not creating with my words, I'm simply telling a story. And I'm also going to call in the violet flame. The violet flame is an energetic tool that transmutes energy, non-visible, non-physical energy, transmutes it to a neutral state of energy. I'm going to invoke that over my words so that we're not creating in this video. We're just listening to and telling a story. The energy line comes in. This is intentional. So what I'm saying is there's an unseen force. It places its hand at the outside of the plasma ball of Earth's atmosphere and directs, and because of the placement, it actually directs an energetic transmission to the Earth. And the transmission is expected to be absorbed and received by the Earth and therefore its inhabitants. But that's not what happens. Okay, that was the plan. And where is that in here? Let's take a look. You see that right here. Here was the insertion point. Now there's a little bit of, I know we're looking at a scientific chart, but we're dealing in effect with, to a certain extent, I want to say magical energies. So I'm taking a intuitive approach, but also assessing the energies and assessing the scientific data here. Now, why do I say there's a magical approach? There's a magical approach because people with training understand how to influence and affect energy. Kings and queens have always had magicians, people behind the scenes that understood these things. Even President Ronald Reagan in the United States had an astrologer. What do you think she was doing? The astrologer was calling key moments and what actions would be best taken at key moments. That's what they do. That's what, King Arthur and his magician Merlin are one of the most famous examples in Western culture of this. The prophets of the Bible, in a way, are a Christian example of this. They are able to commune with the divine. They're able to see energy, project the future, what is going to happen in the future. How do they do that? They do that through a divine connection. So when we're working with energy, there's everything from using intention only, not imbued by divine force or divine power or divine intention or divine will. And then on the way other side of that, there's alignment with divine will and the unfolding of the divine plan. I know this might seem weird to talk about when we're looking at the Schumann resonance graph, but what's important to understand here is that for me, these charts that we look at together, what is going on in these charts is reflective of both, there's a quantum nature to it. If you understand quantum physics, then what ends up happening is quantum physics unfolds into an interdimensional nature. So there's an interdimensional physics aspect to this. And when you get into interdimensional physics and even quantum physics, but especially interdimensional physics, there is no separation between the divine and science. It's all one. So there's our science lesson for today. Okay, so that is why it's important, because these things must be manipulated at almost a quantum level for the timing to unfold the way it does. Now I'm going to explain that. So you see here, a space opens up in the chart, and the reason I'm bringing up magic and magicians is this right here. Let's take a closer look at what that is. Whoa, do you see this? It's like there is a trident, Neptune's trident, right here. And what does it do? It's like a little fork when you're using a fork to lift open a can of tuna, you open the can with the can opener and then the darn thing is still closed and you've got to insert a fork and lift it up and get some space, right? So that then you can get the food out. Well, in the energy field right here, and this is a close-up crop of the chart we were just looking at, it's almost like an energetic trident was inserted and a space was opened up within which to place the karyotype transmission. Now, the thing about this, I just released a video called Background Signals. And the reason I released it before this video was so that I could reference it in this video. Do you see the background signal here? Do 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 do. That's it's only a 2-minute video. I'll link it below if you want to watch it. But what you can see here is that the trident appears to hijack this transmission, this background symbol. Now, how do we know that this background signal wasn't there all along for the purpose of doing the hijacking? These very dark forces, and I'm talking about things like archonic forces, which is, for all intents and purposes, a type of demonic energy. What I've seen is that it comes in as a transmission when those frequencies attempt to enter into your space. They come in as a hijacking. They present themselves as one thing, but they're really another. You've heard of light masquerading as darkness. So it comes in presenting one way, but it's really an attempt of the dark forces to hijack something. It's a typical strategy of demonic energies and black magicians. And so that's how this feels to me, like it's a hijacking using Neptunian type energies, because that is a lot like the trident of Neptune. And right now, the planet Neptune, and I'm not an astrologer, I would refer you to Laura Walker at the Oracle Report. She is amazing with nailing this, and she also talks about how the dark forces and cabal type forces utilize these energies for their purposes. So her work ties in with what I'm addressing here. Okay, so you get the trident come in. The trident hijacks the signal, which is somehow related to, humans living on Earth. I don't know what it is, but it gets hijacked. In the hijacking, a space opens up that wasn't there before, and the virus download is inserted. That's what I see here in this chart. Now, I want to explain what the meaning of this is. Do you see here? Do you see these they're almost balls of energy? What's amazing to me is that when an energy shows up like this, it affects the chart backwards in time and forwards in time. So you can see the insertion comes, and that's why I said that there is a quantum nature to these energies of the Schumann resonance. Because if something happens in a moment, the only way it can also affect going backwards in time is if it is occurring with a quantum nature. That is a quality of quantum physics. Anyway, so how do you see it affecting backwards in time? Well, you see this space opens and it's almost like a backwards effect. It's like it went backwards in time and forwards in time. It's almost like it makes a splash. If you could see it, right? Like if we thought of this as the ocean and the top of the chart as the surface of the water, if we could see this inserted, you'd see the ripples going out to left and to the right. That's another way to look at it. If you, in your mind, 3D manipulate the chart so that we're looking from the top down, from the surface of the atmosphere down towards the planet. That's how I think of this. I want to address these little these explosions of the green resonance. Green balls on top of each other often remind me of the human chakra system. So when they show up, sometimes what I perceive is that something is going on with the human chakra system or the human energy field specifically. Now, here are these two pillars of light, and in the video about the end of the story of the virus, we talk about the two pillars that are also present there. Now, these two pillars also are a reminder of the two towers that were knocked down on 9/11. So those two towers also had occult symbolism, although most of us in the United States probably never thought of it that way. I know I never thought of it that way when I was working in finance. But I have learned a lot about life since then. So these represent a divine force, in my view, the two pillars. And if you want more information on that, I'll link the video below where I talked more in depth about the symbolism of the pillars. So you have the pillars in the foreground. Now, this is another aspect of quantum physics and quantum energies. When you look at this chart, you can imagine it as having depth. So in my view, the two pillars appear forwards in the chart. The green frequency, what's happening to that, the green resonance, what's happening to the green resonance is behind the two pillars. Now, do you see how the green resonance, see this line here is behind. This line here is in front. The green resonance, which I've said, in my view, it tends to represent the human beings on the planet and what's going on with them. They go through this narrow doorway here, this narrow gate, bounded by two vertical lines of light in the chart. It's behind the divine expression of this concept. So it is not in alignment with divine will. The human energy, we go through this gateway, end up on the timeline where there's an insertion point, and suddenly we're hit with a viral download, a veritic, if you will, energetic influence, a parasitic influence, because in the virus end of the story download, we talked about why viruses are parasite-like. So this activity of the virus download is not in alignment with divine will for the earth and humanity. That's what this tells me here. And that is why I talked about the workings of black magicians, and that this trident appears to be a rider on top of a frequency transmission that's normally present. It's like it's a hack. It's a hack of the normal bands to insert the karyotype of the virus. It will be affecting the human energy field and chakra system. It will be affecting humanity. Okay, that's what this, because after the intention's made, you see what it affects, right? It goes forward in time to the karyotype. It goes backward in time to the human chakra system. Oh, and this viral download is not in alignment with divine will. I can't emphasize that enough. And that's why we get an immediate response. The white colored resonance, in my view, reflects a higher light, like a celestial, kind of a divine will. Sometimes, I'll give you an example. If you remember that this was a terrible tragedy, there was an Ariana Grande concert in London some time ago. I think it was a couple years ago now. And some young people were shot at that concert. Well, immediately, the white frequency spiked in the chart, and you saw a huge splash of the white resonance in this Schumann resonance chart. The same thing happened with the Hawaii missile alert in 2018. When that alert happened, the entire world focused its attention on Hawaii, okay? Because let's face it, a potential nuclear blast is something the entire world is concerned with. The entire Schumann resonance chart was almost totally white for about 2 days. So these anecdotal observations are why I say that this white light has a divine feel to it, but also from the human heart, pure love, pure compassion for each other. So let's look at what happens when the karyotype lands. It's immediately responded to. 1, 2, 3, 4 huge bars of light. And let's look at the quality of them. So we've got, okay, so what I see here is a lifting out. The light comes in, it identifies these tiny particles. And that's why I talked about this idea of is there nanotechnology somehow related to this virus, or some kind of advanced technology related to this virus download? Because these little particles to me seem like, don't they look like, remember the dots on dot matrix printers? They have a technology aspect to them. They remind me of that. They feel foreign and invasive. And they're also in the red. They're also reddish here and reddish purple here, but reddish. And the red and yellow frequencies have tended to embody the dark forces characters that I sometimes see in the chart. In particular, the red interdimensional spiders. I don't remember which video I talked about this on before, but since the fire at Notre Dame almost a year ago now, I had seen this red interdimensional spider in the chart, and those are reflective of what I like to call the bad guys, the archonic energies can present as interdimensional spiders, and they're very creepy, but they are defeated by light. That's the end of the story. So anyway, so the light comes in and boom. Okay, so it's like it hits these particles and it's identifying them. It's assessing them. What is this? And then what it does is it assesses them and then starts to lift their influence out. We've identified their influence and we're going to lift it out now. You see here that from the very beginning, when the virus came in, it could not get below this level. This here, to me, is a lifting out of the lower dimensions. So we have more than one interpretation in the same linear part of the chart. This is a quantum effect and an interdimensional effect. So I'm doing an interdimensional interpretation. The dimension we're looking at here is not the same dimension as here. I know that this can be hard to understand and get your arms around, but the fact is, in quantum physics, two things that appear opposite can both be true. That is the nature of that type of physics. And I believe that because of that particular nature of quantum physics, that this is one of the reasons why it wasn't rolled out to humanity when it was first discovered, which was literally 100 years ago. Almost 100 years ago, give or take 10 years. But, humanity we really need to expand our consciousness to understand these concepts. And for whatever reason, either we weren't ready, or the forces that control these things weren't ready, or they wanted to play with us a little bit longer. All right, so the lower part of the chart has a bedrock aspect to it. I'm going to have to do a video on that another time for time saving. But it's almost like this lower part of the chart is close to the earth. You can almost think about it as the depths of the oceans. It's very protected, and humanity is almost very protected in the heart of Mother Earth. The virus was not able to get below this line. My friend Alex calls it, what did she call it? The wall. It's an aspect of the wall. The bedrock of humanity is not in agreement. And there were little bedrock images that appeared in the chart. I will do another video on that to show you. At its foundation, the heart of humanity is not aligned with this chicanery. Okay, it is not aligned. We are not aligned with these black magic effects, We are not aligned with invasive parasitic viruses being put into our human population by whatever means that ended up happening by. We are not aligned with that. And so we have a level of protection because our heart says no. What is in the heart is in alignment with divine will. It's a pure expression because the heart is where the soul connects, and the soul is what assists divine will expressing through the human being. All right, now check out this line here, the number 2 line. So the veridic download occurs. The first line assesses. The second line protects. All right, now we talked about the green frequency being representative of humanity. Well, look what happens. The green frequency, it makes my heart feel so full, is enveloped and wrapped in white. In the second, see that? Look at that. All the way down, we are wrapped. There's a little breakout here of the darker color. You know, in my view, all is turned to the highest good. So if someone passes away and dies from this virus, it's my view that the divine turns that to their highest good in spirit. I'm sharing my opinions here. You may or may not agree, and that's fine with me. I'm just sharing my thoughts. Okay, so this is, like I said, this is another dimension. Now we're not at bedrock here. This particle is a particleization. This is one way that energy is cleared. It gets particleized, and then as it's particleized, it gets lifted out. Now, to me, this is also an example of what been said to happen in the lungs of people who have this veridic effect on their bodies right now, where there's all this energy in the lungs that's gunky and you can't breathe. Let me tell you something. I had that very condition in the late summer, early fall. I couldn't believe it. I could barely breathe, and I felt like I had to make a choice between living and dying. I did this in energy to help heal myself. I brought in the higher light into my lungs and asked that the higher light lift out energetically these particles, this almost like a dust that seemed to be in my lungs that I couldn't cough out. Now, I also took medicine and other things, but I'm explaining the energy because we're talking about energy, talking about the Schumann Resonance. I really, like I said, have other people that I go to for the effects on biology, and one of them is Alex Clark, who helped me understand the effects on the human body of this veridic influence, and I'm going to link her biological imperative articles down below. If you're interested in this video, I think you will find them interesting. So here again, a fourth time the light comes in, and you see how the band turns from dominated by red to dominated by green. It clears. Okay, so this is the story of what is going to happen to this virus right here in a nutshell over these few hours. And I know this is a longer video, but I just felt the need to address some of these concepts. First, the virus is assessed. Second, humanity is protected. Third, the veridic element is identified. The light is shown on it, and it's lifted out so that the human being can be healed. And here in the fourth transmission of higher light, the veridic element is addressed, and the light is turned to pure green. Humanity is healed of the virus, which is represented by the red light in this chart. This is how I knew the virus would be defeated and why I wrote an article, why I drafted an article called Energy Virus Eliminated, Download Failed. At that time, I didn't know there was an actual physical virus. What is also telling in this chart is the attempt to blame the virus download on President Trump and his team. And that information is down here. I mentioned that this occurred before the full moon. The reason that I mentioned that is in terms of how moon energy works, The new moon is for setting intentions, for setting what will be the new. The full moon is for harvest. So this virus is an attempt to harvest work done by the dark forces, to harvest that from humanity, whether that's money, whether that's more fear and anger that the dark forces use for their own purposes, because they can use the actual energy of emotions if they're negative, and even feed off of them, as many people have described the actual activities that go on there, on this planet. So that's why this virus was inserted before the full moon. However, that insertion occurred. We just see it play out here in energy. Now, the attempt to blame President Trump is right here. It was inserted 17 hours before the full moon, almost exactly. 17 is the number for the Q group, and the Q group is widely seen as and aligned with, or somehow put out by President Trump and some level of U.S. military intelligence. So you can see here that there's going to be both an attempt to blame this on those forces. We know that this is actually done by the dark forces because of the factors I talked about in this part of the chart, because of the trident and the hacking that was done here, and because the actual intention was set 27 hours before the full moon, not 17. Okay, the actual effect that caused the virus was the intention to insert and the space made to allow the insertion. So there's sort of a time dilation here, okay? It appears that the virus shows up 17 hours before the full moon, but this is where the insertion point was. This is where it landed. The activity occurred 27 hours before the full moon, which is a 9. Someone else can interpret what a 9 means. But it's the end, the culmination of a cycle, and that kind of goes along with the idea of putting this in before the full moon to harvest energies from humanity. And I say that with a lot of love and blessings wished for our human population, who is being put through so much right now, and so much suffering, pain, and trauma over the virus, the response to the virus, the fear. All of us are really having to face the fear of death in this. It's 7 billion people. I mean, wow, what an effect that this has had on us, beyond the shelter in place, the lockdowns, the restrictions on travel, and all the rest of it. The inability to spend time with friends, associates, to go to work, and on and on. There's something else that I want to tell you here, and it's very personal. Right here, the beginning of the insertion. Local time. This is about 7:30-ish. 7:30-ish. The insertion lasted for 1 hour, from about 7:30 to 8:30. What I wanted to say was that this virus was inserted here at 7:30 local time. 24 hours later, my mom passed away. So she had been in the hospital for some time. And if you're wondering why my videos did not come out in order on this, and why I didn't print that article that I had written on the 10th, is because that is what happened. And I think that, some people react to energy, some people react to the physical. My mom passed away from pneumonia. God only knows what she really had in hindsight, given that we now know this virus was going around for quite a while. But the fact of the matter is that that wasn't the initial cause of why she went to the hospital. That was just how she died, from pneumonia. So blessings on her. and blessings to all of us who have lost loved ones at this time from whatever the cause, and at any time from whatever the cause. I certainly feel for you guys and for myself in all of this.